Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation, and I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Attic new release roundup. If you're new here, welcome. What we do is we go back and forth. We talk about the latest home video releases, the good, the bad, the putrid, a little bit of everything in between. I say this every week, but we have a really interesting and very diverse selection. So I'm gonna start it off with one I've never heard of, but I kind of just picked because it looked interesting. I don't want to start off on a sour note, but here we are. So, Brightwood, um, and here's the back. We do have some features. I will say your mileage may vary on the movie, but I like that they did put some effort into this release. Sort of. So the movie itself, I don't want to be super negative. I think the concept is interesting. So they without giving really a lot away, there is this sort of time loop thing. It's this like couple and they're like fighting, and it's sort of like this very in your face metaphor for them just sort of going around and around with their relationship, but they literally find themselves in this loop, endless loop in this hike. I will say the concept's solid. I think it definitely gets very repetitive, but more than that, I think like tonally, it's really, really weird. Like it's trying to be very serious, but then there's some like humor that doesn't work. But then also there's like some very sitcom-y sort of things going on, like line delivery, and it's like I could almost hear a laugh track at some points with it. And that's hard to do because this movie is trying to do something interesting and serious. There are some like moments where I'm going to be generous and say the actors are fine. They do their best with, I think, the material. I know that sounds like a backhanded compliment, but like it's something. Like I'm trying to be very fair. I know this was made on not a huge budget, but it doesn't take any budget to just write something interesting. Like this would have been a really good short film. Like had this been part of like an anthology and maybe like 20 minutes, I think this could be really cool. Like there is a certain point towards the end where I really did find myself invested in the mystery and what was going on. The ending was like not good. So, I mean, and I followed this up with like a better film today, so it was like not as bad, but yeah. Yeah, and I hate trashing on like a little indie film. So if it does sound remotely interesting, check it out. I'm not saying like completely shun this film. It does have some interesting things. They do it's just they undercut all the suspense and the tension with this weird humor and it never lands. That's just where it would disconnect it for me. But I mean, still check it out. Like I said, I'm a champion of indie film, like especially horror. So I don't know. Check it out. It's fine. Also, real quick, I know it's just a 720p release, but the way it was shot, it looks really bad. Like it looks like it was shot on digital, but like in the upconvert, it just looks very lackluster. Like it kind of would have been nice to have a Blu-ray release, but probably the confidence wasn't there to put out a Blu-ray release, which I can kind of see. Sorry to say, but it's fine. If you have your expectations super low, it's not good though.
Yeah, you're not selling me on even trying it out, so who knows if
Yeah.
I actually will. But I understand wanting to try to spare feelings whenever possible. But eh. Um, my first title is from Lionsgate. It's a new 4K re-release steelbook exclusively through Best Buy, and that is Ender's Game. This was one of like the early Lionsgate 4K releases, so some of our audience may already own this, but there's a nice steel book and it has this removable slip cover here. Some nice artwork here on the back as well. Spine. So, and it has some interior artwork. So I'll show you here's the 4K disc and the Blu-ray disc and the interior artwork here. So you have kind of like the alien figure that they're fighting here. So that's all together here. All right. So this was a movie I picked up several Black Fridays ago on Blu-ray for very cheap. And I never ended up getting around to it because that's my MO apparently. But with this 4K re-release, I was like, okay, I never upgraded it to 4K previously, and I love a good steelbook presentation when it looks like some effort was put into it. So I wanted to dig into this finally. This is based on I believe it's a young adult book series actually, and I remember when this came around that there was like some controversy around this movie, and I kind of refreshed myself with some of that controversy, and basically is that the author is a piece of shit, and he's like very homophobic, and I think there's a little bit of like trans exclusionary stuff in here as well. Like there's not like overt things, but there's kind of like coded things where I'm just like, knowing his background, I was like, ooh, that was probably some kind of like trans exclusionary like dog whistle language. Like there's like a part like because there's like these new recruits and like the leader's like kind of like running down like kind of the rules. He's like, if I catch any member like in like the other like non-natural gender or something, like I'll like basically if you get into like the other person like a non-sanctioned area, he'll skin you alive basically. And I'm like, yikes. That's very like binary, like if you're a man, stick with man, woman. So it's kind of like okay. It's not like hit over the head, it's just one kind of throwaway line, but I'm like, did you really need that in here? So that's kind of weird. But setting like his problematic nature aside, overall I think this is a fairly solid young adult movie. I've been kind of on a kick in recent months. I've been revisiting the Hunger Games movies. I watched the Divergent movies, which weren't really super great. I really like the Hunger Games movies, but Divergent movies are I would say this is below Hunger Games but ahead of Divergent for me. It's a really interesting kind of take on, like, it's a commentary on war and how we treat combat and everything. It's about several years after like this huge like alien invasion, where it was like this conflict where humans versus like these encroaching aliens, and we ended up winning, but there's always this kind of looming threat that they may return. So there's been like this kind of development system where all these children are kind of like going through these tests to see if they might be like basically good enough to join this elite program that could be like the next group of like soldiers that will fight this race. And the main character Ender proves himself to be like one of like the best tactical minds and all that stuff. So it's a lot of him getting recruited to this program and him training for this potential war in the future. So it's a lot of like moral questioning of just like, and like tactician stuff of just like, don't go about with brute force, like think about things like your approach and all that stuff. So it really makes you like consider how one like how children are indoctrinated with war, and like what kind of like program to kind of like strike without thinking about things a lot of times. And the way this movie ends up, like the conclusion of like, because of course there's going to be like a final big battle, which you have to have in like one of these movies, but the way the fallout from that battle and kind of some of the revelations from like what was the battle meant in the grand scheme of things is very interesting on like a moral side, just like what is moral, what is like is it worth like the needs of the like many outweigh the needs of the few, that type of like kind of questioning. This is all within like a young adult context. The characters are pretty solid. I like a lot of the actors, a lot of great actors. There's Harrison Ford, Sir Ben Kingsley, a young Haley Steinfeld is in here with the star Asa Butterfield. Viola Davis is in this. So there's a lot of really great actors elevating this material and giving it a little bit of gravitas. It's not a great movie, and it sets itself up for a sequel that it will never happen. But I think it leaves off on a place where I never really felt like I needed a sequel. If you would have cut off the last 3 minutes, I would have been like, okay, this is a good one and done. were good. I don't feel like I'm missing out by never completing this story because it felt pretty contained. There's some really good like special effects. It's a really grand like space opera-ish movie. It's worth seeking out if you're a fan of young adult movies like this. If you kind of think it's kind of like trash and not worth your time, if you're kind of like dismissive of like the Hunger Games and stuff, I don't think this is going to win you over. But if you can get over some of like problems with the author, he's terrible by all things considered. I think it's a pretty interesting sci-fi tale that wrestles with morality and all that, everything. So I liked it overall. It's not great, but I had a good time with it. I'm glad I finally caught up with it. This 4K, it looks really nice. It comes with HDR and Dolby Atmos audio. The Dolby Atmos audio like nearly shook me out of my seat. It's very powerful. I really liked it. It's a good, well, like all-encompassing audio mix. The high dynamic range looks great. It's a very crisp movie. I believe this was like originally recorded in maybe like 6K and like down converted to 4K. So it's like very crisp and like nice. Some of the black levels are not ideal, but I didn't see like a lot of crush, but some of like them look a little bit like gray more than black sometimes. So that's the only kind of fault I would kind of note. But otherwise, I think it's a pretty solid 4K transfer, especially since this was early on in the life cycle of 4K. This has no special features on the 4K disc. All the legacy special features on the original disc, which are 2 commentary tracks and a 49-minute making of featurette, which is pretty substantial, and then like some deleted scenes and some trailers and stuff. So pretty well-rounded package, nice packaging that I really like here. So if you're a fan of the movie, head to Best Buy and you can like pick up the this exclusive while it remains. If you already have the 4K, but Steelbook packaging doesn't appeal to you, just stick with what you got. But I would at least say the subject interests you. Maybe find it somewhere for streaming and see if you like it. But if you like it, it's a really good presentation from Lionsgate.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like I kind of remember that controversy when it was happening. I don't know. It's been a while since I've really gotten into like the young adult sort of dystopian fantasy thing. But maybe that's a good excuse to dip my toes back into that. So my next title is one that I was kind of hoping they would finally get to. And that is a sequel to Father of the Bride, Father's Little Dividend.
Hmm.
And here's the back. Yeah, so I like Father of the Bride, the original, not the Steve Martin one, but the Spencer Tracy one. And I feel like I had seen the sequel before, but this was like a nice refresher because it's been a little while. I will say it's pretty much just as charming as the first, maybe not as good. I think it's kind of hard to recapture the magic of the first film, and this feels kind of like a bit of a blueprint from the first film, just with the baby. So it's fine. It's definitely not that long, and I think one of the best things about this is the cast. Spencer Tracy, of course, is great. Joan Bennett, who horror fans will remember as Madame Blanc from Suspiria and a lot of other things. Of course, you have Elizabeth Taylor, Billy Burke, Glenda the Good Witch. So many great character actors. It's a lot of fun. It's very charming. There are some really sweet moments. There's a really nice heart to heart that Tracy has with Elizabeth Taylor's character. The two have a really nice chemistry that I think like really sells that sort of father-daughter dynamic. So yeah, it's all really good. It's very fluffy if you're kind of in the mood for that. I know a lot of times you say that we have a lot of very harsh, depressing movies. So if you want something very light and bubbly, this is really good. It looks really great. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Warner Archive always smashes it out of the park. It looks as pristine as I feel like I've ever seen it. I know I've seen it on DVD and on TCM, and this kind of blows both of those out of the water. They really delivered here. I always kind of wish that they would do more like exclusive stuff, like commentary track, something. We do get some like shorts, and it's pretty fun. I mean, so it's not bare bones. And yeah, and I also want to put it out there. I want the Catered Affair on Blu-ray. That's also from Warner Brothers. Have you ever seen that one?
I have not.
It's a really charming movie with Betty Davis, and Ernest Borgnine plays the husband. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's a fun movie. I'd check it out if you haven't seen it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to catching up on that. I bought Father of the Bride, the Spencer Tracy one, a couple years back. I have not checked it out, but I think I'll catch up on that and then check out this new one just to complete the series for myself. So that seems like a fun weekend activity. Carrying on the theme of fathers, this is my next one from Lionsgate. It is about my father with Sebastian Maniscalco and Robert De Niro. There's also some other great ensemble actors that I'll mention here in a second. So there's probably going to be some, at least a few fans of Sebastian Maniscalco in the audience. I personally am not a huge fan of his, but I still want to check this out. I know I've seen him like a little bit of his stand-up, and I've seen him like on like Comedians in Cars, and I find him just to be a little bit much for me. But I love Robert De Niro, and the ensemble really appealed to me, and I'm always up for like trying to at least find a good comedy these days. And this one is serviceable at best if I'm being charitable and kind of desperate for comedies. It's not like very good, but I got a few laughs out of it. It's kind of taken from his real life where Sebastian plays Sebastian, who he is his father, played by Robert De Niro, is like acclaimed within the community, at least not like worldwide, acclaimed like hairdresser and stuff, and like kind of raised his son to kind of be like a proud Italian and like kind of like have like traditional views of masculinity, all that type of stuff. But he starts dating a white woman played by Leslie Bibb, who I adore, and she's really hilarious in this. And they are like talking about potentially getting married, but before they can make that step to getting engaged, their families have to meet. And of course, like there's like culture clashes, and like, oh, like Sebastian and his father are kind of like the uncultured people coming into this like lavish like one percenter world where like Leslie Bibb's parents, one of which is played by Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City. I was gonna call her Samantha, but like nope, that's her character name. Kim Cattrall, and like her family has like Anders Holm from Workaholics and some other great performers. They're kind of like this like rich like politician family, so it's kind of like I said, culture clash and stuff, which can be kind of boring. It's very obvious humor where it's like Robert De Niro is playing the dad who's like being like treated to a dinner, and he's like, all right, like what does everything cost? I need to know what everything, like kind of that kind of type of humor. And like, oh, what are you doing with these peacocks on the grounds? Just kind of obvious things like that. And him being shocked that his son knows how to play tennis very well and has like a tennis outfit. It's a lot of jokes like that. And some of them do land mostly because I do really love Robert De Niro, and he's just naturally pretty funny. Like whenever he wants to be, whenever he's not killing people in mafia movies, he can be pretty funny. But if I'm like judging this objectively, it's not a really good movie. It's kind of lazy. The emotions are kind of trite. The performances are really what holds this one up. I think I probably would have enjoyed it if there was a different lead besides Sebastian, but those who are a big fan of his will probably enjoy his presence. So, okay, passable, not great. I wouldn't rush out to buy this. Maybe rent it if you're a fan of his and see if you want to own it one day, but it just barely got the job done for me. But this Blu-ray, it gets the job done. It looks really nice. It sounds great. It surprisingly has a Dolby Atmos audio track, which was like more firepower than I expected this one to have. And it sounds really nice. Crisp, clean palette. There are like 3 brief featurettes that kind of like talk about how this is like Sebastian's rise from comedian to like a movie, like being in movies, like drawing on inspirations from his life, yada yada, that type of featurette stuff. So hardcore fans of Sebastian, probably only if you're a fan of like De Niro, Kim Cattrall, Anders Holm, rent it, maybe enjoy their spots, and then kind of like forget about it. That's probably what I'll do. But otherwise, yeah, Lionsgate, about my father. It's fine.
Forget about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's enough of that. Sorry. Preemptively apologize for that. Yeah, that like flew completely under my radar. Was that like a very small release? Was that like not a very big?
Yeah, it came out right before Memorial Day this year, and it kind of like got buried. And it came out like right at the same time as another comedian movie with Burt Kreischer called The Machine. So it's like two comedians jump into being in mainstream comedies, and I was like, this is a weird release strategy. Like they're all kind of being bunched up and stuff. So is wild.
Huh. Okay. So, I'm gonna go. We're going. This is a little bit of a whiplash, but we're going from a comedy to something very serious.
Mhm.
Um, and I also just want to preemptively have like a trigger warning. This movie talks about assault, of a sexual nature, and obviously skip ahead. We have time codes in the description. If that is something that's triggering, just a warning. So, this is Outrage, and this is a really important film and one that I've actually known was coming out for a few years now. And it's not that I was excited to see it, I guess, because that's seems inappropriate, but I was interested because, again, it is such a groundbreaking film, which I will get into. This is probably among the first films to really address this sort of assault in a way that is thoughtful for the time. It just might flat out be the first American film to tackle it from a woman's perspective. That is Ina Lupino. She's a famous director, actor. We've covered her stuff in the past. Kino put out a amazing box set, which if it's still in print, I'll put that in description as well. So yeah, this movie, as I said, features a sort of all-American woman who gets assaulted, and she's has a lot of very long-lasting scars. We would say that she has PTSD, but I don't know if maybe that was in the lexicon at the time, or if it was, it hadn't been really used like that much. But anyways, yeah, this really does like show how these effects can last long after the actual act itself, which of course in hindsight we know that, but this was 1950s, so this wasn't really in the cultural conversation. I do like that this film sort of aims to show that in a serious way. She has some romantic interest, but I like how the film is sensitive enough to not really push a love interest on her per se. Like she doesn't end up with somebody. It would feel inappropriate and kind of icky to cram in that. And I like how even back in 1950 they were like, okay, maybe that's probably not the best way to handle this. So it does sort of have a happy ending on how you interpret things. It doesn't give you easy answers, but I think that's the point. I think it, besides a few missteps, I think they handle the subject matter really well. I mean, especially for the time. This has a really great commentary track by Sarah Smith, who really breaks this film down in a very thoughtful and interesting way. I watched this film twice, once without the track, and then second time with. So it was very much worth double dipping for this really insightful commentary track. It looks great. This comes from a 4K scan. I kind of have to wonder if this took a little longer to come out because of the transfer, but it looks spectacular. So well worth the wait. I don't think that it has really any major flaws picture wise. They obviously were working from some really nice material. Everything looks pristine. The black and white contrast look really nice. Everything kind of pops. It's not in color, but you can really see how well it was photographed, the production design, the costumes. It's 75 minutes long. It's short, but it's I think impactful. I think it does what it sets out to do, which is have a conversation about this. And yeah, it's very heavy. I'm thankful that they didn't really show you the act itself. But in a way, I find that more disturbing because there's a scene where it's over and she's just sort of limping home, and it's
Mhm.
so gut wrenching. But I mean, that's the point, and I think filmmakers were correct in sort of not making it exploitative. I mean, you couldn't really show a lot in the 50s anyways, but like thankfully, it's sort of like we know what happened, we know the severity of it, let's just not linger on it. But yeah, to get to point out that she was trying to make. So Outrage, if you are not put off by that and you are willing to, go with its message, I recommend it.
Yeah, I watched that one about a week or two ago, and I'm becoming a very big Ido Lupino fan, and I like I said, I didn't enjoy this one, but I liked how it was executed. It was tough, but I did really like it, and I think it was handled as well as it could be at that time. At least I'm pretty sure that's not from a female director, is it?
Yeah, she directed
She
that.
she also directed it.
Yep. Hmm.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yep.
that's good then.
Yeah, and that's why I think, like, and please, if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments, but I think this might be the first like film to directed by a woman to tackle this subject matter. I mean, I could be wrong because there was a lot of excellent women directors in the silent film era, so probably that's not correct, but at least in the modern, or at least a little bit more modern times. I don't know. Film experts chime in, prove me wrong or right, whichever.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if she had ever directed herself, so that's interesting. So I cracked open my Ida Lupino collection earlier this year, and that's a really solid collection. Like you said, I think you're gonna link it in the description if it's still available. Highly recommend that.
Yep.
So my next title, okay, last week, anyone who tuned in last week knows I covered an ungodly amount of movies because there was just way too many like multi-film sets. I only have like 2 sets that include more than one film this time out, thankfully. But this is my first one. This is from Yellow Bell Pictures in collaboration with Vinegar Syndrome. So there's reversible cover art, so I'll show you both cover arts. So this is first Tower, A Bright Day. That's the entire title of the first one. These are both Polish films. So, and then the other side, or the other film included in this, is the second feature from the director, which I'm going to probably butcher her name. It is Jagoda Zelchik. So apologies to her. I don't think she said her name in the special feature, so I'm pleading innocence for that. The second film is Monument, which I like this cover art a lot better. It's brighter, but I think both are fun. So I'll just show this does come on 2 discs. So here's Monument and Tower, A Bright Day. And then it also comes with a booklet here. So you have like an essay inside and pictures and stuff. So it kind of gives you some context to her work and all that stuff, which I found very helpful. I was reading some reviews before I embarked upon these, just to kind of, I was wondering generally what people thought of these films. And basically, there's a lot of people that really like them, but a lot of people that are like, nothing happens. And I was just like, interesting. Okay, let's see how this goes for me. And I can understand why people would be disappointed in these movies if they're going looking for like a traditional horror movie. This is not it. This is very unsettling, and if you listen to one of the interviews that is on this disc, you kind of unlock kind of the key to enjoying her movies, which is like she was talking about like viewing certain like social or like human dramas like from the Dardenne brothers, and she's like, these are classified as dramas, but to me these are horror movies and stuff. Like, these are horror movies to me, just like kind of like basically the existential dread of existing. And I was like, okay, this is where she's approaching her like horror lens, like just like human drama is horror. So viewing it, if you go into these movies with that kind of in mind, you might enjoy this more. But Tower, A Bright Day, it's very interesting because I heard there was kind of like some of the descriptions kind of talks about being some witchy elements to this, which there kind of are, but mostly it's like a human drama where at the beginning of the film, there is a woman who is coming back after several years away. It's like kind of kept unclear about where she's been, but you can kind of tell she's been off somewhere living some life, and she's returning to her family after years away. And she's returning to her sister who has been raising her young daughter, who does not know that she is like the returning woman is her actual mother. She just believes that that is going to be like her aunt. And one of the conditions upon her returning is just like, do not let this child know that you are her actual mother. Don't like be weird. Don't let anyone else like in the village know that you are her mother. There's like this tension throughout. Like there's like this armed bomb throughout from the beginning where you're like, is this secret going to come out? Where has she been? And while she is amongst her family, little weird things starts happening. Like her mom kind of makes like, she's been kind of convalescent, but then she kind of makes like a miraculous recovery one day. And it's never kind of like heavy handed and like, oh, this woman is supernatural or anything. It's just kind of like underlying, and it's very kind of creepy, and things just kind of happen. If you've ever seen the movie by Karen Kusama, The Invitation, there's kind of like a sense of existential dread at like a dinner party where you know that something is off and something is probably going to happen. You just don't know what. That film actually leads to some craziness. I would say that this film doesn't really lead to like a grand, like, holy shit moment. Like it leads to something, but it's very low key. So this is like very kind of vibes. And the second movie, Monument, is pretty much the same way, but even more so. That movie involves a group of young people who are they're like taking a bus trip to start their like internship for the summer at like this hotel. So they're going to learn like hotel management and stuff. But whenever these kids, they like kind of wake up on this bus outside of the hotel. Their driver is missing, and they kind of wander off the bus into this hotel, and they kind of like start learning kind of the ropes of this hotel. But everything is slightly askew. Like everything kind of feels almost like a David Lynch movie where like things just kind of happen, and you're kind of like, wait, what did I just see that thing out of the corner or something? But like it's very weird and just kind of like an uneasiness throughout. But a lot of it, which really frustrates people, are just characters in rooms having mundane conversations just about their lives. But then there's like weird editing transitions, or like in the midst of a conversation, like a character will say a line that just does not sound right. But then like no one really acknowledge it. And you're just kind of like, wait, what? What was that? Like, what was that line? I want to know more about that line. And there's just like people not acknowledging each other when they like move throughout the hallway. So it's just kind of like, what is going on in this kind of hotel? And you do eventually kind of learn about stuff, but once again, that's not the point of the movie. It's really just vibes and like just being unsteady and just kind of feeling off throughout. It's very, very interesting. And like I am not as hardcore of a horror fan as some others. I do really love it. I talk about a lot of horror movies, but I don't need so much like crazy jump scares or like crazy gore. It's fun. It can be a lot of fun, but I don't always need that. Sometimes I like kind of like that psychological dread. And this really hit the spot. And it does, if you kind of do like kind of like the A24 brand of horror, maybe something more along the lines of like The Witch or something, maybe try this out. Just know this more like art house horror than just like traditional like I don't want to use the term like elevated horror because that's kind of fucked up, but like I'm saying like art house horror, and it's kind of different than like what's fed to the mainstream, and there's some nice overlap where that's kind of like the sweet spot. But overall, these two films like Monument and Tower of Bright Day are very interesting if you're kind of wanting those kind of like vibe driven horror movie. And this release from Yellow Bell Pictures is really great. I'm glad they gave each film its own disc, because like I know Monument's like an hour and 50 minutes, and I think like Tower of Bright Day is like an hour and 40 something. So I'm glad they didn't try to cram them onto one disc. The first disc with Tower of Bright Day, it includes several short films from the director, some behind the scenes like still galleries and rehearsal footage and all that stuff. The second film, the second disc with Monument includes a 20-minute interview with the director, which is where I got some of those insights, and some more behind the scenes footage and still galleries and rehearsal footage, all that type of stuff. No commentary tracks, unfortunately, but I did get kind of what I needed from the essay that's included that I showed off. The sound design in these films, like where it might not be the most like narratively driven, the sound design is insane. There's so much going on. It's very unsettling and like off kilter. It's very powerful in this DTS 5.1 in the original Polish. Sounds very great. The picture looks really nice. These aren't super old films. I believe it was like 2017 and 2019, maybe 2020, something like that. So not super old. But if it sounds interesting to you at all, it's worth checking out. There is a exclusive slipcover through Vinegar Syndrome. If that interests you, you can go directly to Vinegar Syndrome. I'll link that in the description. Or you can get the standard edition for a few dollars cheaper if you don't care about slipcovers. There you go. So reversible cover art, 2 discs, nice special features, pretty good movies if you're in the mood for it. So yeah, good release overall for both of these films.
Yeah, I mean, both, again, not on my radar, but sounds really interesting. And I do like how you were describing them more as sort of mood pieces, or like it's just more of a vibe. Because it seems like some of the maybe like stiltedness was kind of like purposeful, you would say.
Yeah, for sure. And I do want to mention this. I haven't looked to like confirm. I did see one of the letterbox reviews say that they had watched Monument on Shudder. So maybe check out Shudder if you have that, and see maybe you can test out Monument or maybe both of them. I haven't looked lately, but I did see that at least one time. These were on Shudder.
Well, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure I saw that it recently, as in,
Oh,
like
cool.
the last couple days at least. So I will put a link in the description where y'all can check that out. You know, we're not sponsored by Shudder, but they're great. I love them, so I'm gonna talk. So, anyways,
Awesome.
so I also have a double feature, very different movies. I'm not sure how to really pair these two, but just they're both Warner Archive titles, so maybe that's
Great.
we got Elvis in Spinout.
Mm.
Um,
Oh, mama.
that's great. And we got George Kukar's Little Women. And go. And I guess I will start with the Elvis film first, since you did that
Okay.
great impression. You gotta do the
Thank
hip
you.
things. I don't know what that was, sorry.
It's great.
Okay. So Spin Out feel like, I don't want to be really cynical. If you're going into this movie just wanting like race cars and Elvis and like songs, not very good songs, but just Elvis songs, it delivers. You will be entertained if that's what you're looking for. This movie kind of feels like, I was trying to put it into words, and I think I came up with, like, it feels like a committee came up with this movie. Like, what do young people like? Elvis, cars,
Mhm.
bikini women. Just like they had like a checklist. Um, and they sort of just came up with this movie because, like, the dialogue feels like it's trying to be writing for young people, but it's clearly old people writing young people dialogue. Like, you can kind of tell that. It's fine. I think, like I said, the big appeal is Elvis. He is still kind of in his prime here. Him, the director, I looked up, worked together a lot, so he's clearly comfortable and sort of in his element. I also read that there's like this rare racing car that is featured in the film, and like was a very limited, not wasn't out that long. So just seeing it in the movies kind of a special thing. Who knew? I know now because I do a little homework for y'all to, give you some extra information. Thank you, thank you. So it's fine. There is something very kitschy and charming about it. Um, it's one of those, yeah, you just turn your brain off and it's like, it's fine. I'm not, I'm I can appreciate Elvis. I'm just not the biggest fan.
Mhm.
So, but it's fine. So my next film was I don't care how this sounds. I was really excited about this. This is the first or at least, yeah, first adaptation of Little Women from 1933. There's a bunch. We just had one in 2019, which was Greta Gerwig's. This is the 1933 version with Katharine Hepburn. I haven't decided which one is my favorite, but I do like this one a lot. It's, for the first time at bat with the adaptation, I think it does a really nice job. It covers a lot of like story beats that are pretty much faithful to the book. I will say that some of the supporting cast is maybe miscast. They're a little bit like eh, but um Katharine Hepburn in this is like far and away my favorite Joe. Like she is like that character to a T. And they were really smart casting her because she was a very physical actor, and they used that with that character in a way that I think is just brilliant. Um, yeah, I mean, Joan Bennett, she's fine. Um, the other cast, they're good. I just think Katharine Hepburn is like the star in this. That's where I kind of like maybe the next one a little bit better because feel like the cast is a little bit more consistent. But this is such a great film. It is very well photographed. There's something really dynamic and charming about how it's filmed, how it's presented. Um, it's also very heartbreaking. There is a YouTuber that I'm obsessed with. Her channel is called Be Kind Rewind. She did a breakdown of all the different versions of Little Women, and she puts it in a really interesting context of the time period that it was made. So I will link that in the description as well, so you can check that out. Because I'm not going to go on and on about Little Women, but I love this version of it. We don't. I double checked this. We do not have the 1949 version. I think it was. That is not out on Blu-ray yet. Hopefully soon. I think all the other versions are though on Blu-ray at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean the next one might be on DVD, but as far as Blu-ray, there hasn't been a US release. Just so you know. For all those hardcore Little Women fans that are going to come out after. So, yeah, I love it. They would not make a good double feature, but they're both really solid releases. They both look great. Spinout is in color, and everything really pops. Again, it has this sort of like very kitschy. It seems like the '60s, but maybe not. When was this made? We can. I don't know. Wow, my eyes are really bad. 1966. So yeah, this has a very like '60s kind of aesthetic, but it pops really well. Again, black and white, but looks really nice. Warner Archive, I never have an issue with. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those, especially Little Women. The Greta Gerwig version was probably in my top 3 movies of 2019, so I'm excited to check out more versions. I've seen the 90s version as well, and so
which one's your
it's just a
favorite?
really so far the Greta Gerwig version, but I need to revisit. I'm hoping that like both the 90s and the 2019 version are both released on 4K soon because I would love to upgrade those. But until then, I'll do with make do with my Blu-rays, but I do really want a 4K release. My next title is from our good friends at Radiance Films. This is A Moment of Romance, which I'll take out kind of the little card here. This is a 1990 film by Benny Chan. Okay, here it is without the little information card, so can fully see it. And then you also have reversible cover art, which I'll show you here. So there you go. I really like this one. This one was interesting. I like that there is a good balance of like action thrills with like kind of a romantic story. This is basically a tale of like a guy who he's in the criminal life, but he's not like a super bad dude. He's just kind of like he's alone, like I think his parents had died, and he's just kind of like been mixed up in this criminal underworld for a little while, and he's like gets mixed up in this job one day, and in order to like escape from the police, he takes a hostage, which is this young woman, and whenever he takes her hostage, he treats her well and stuff, and he wants to, but he's like has to keep her until he can like finish up his job, and he tries to keep her out of sight from like his gang of people and stuff, but she doesn't obey his orders and kind of pops her head up, and they're like, wait, who is that and stuff, and they're like basically order him to kill her, and he's like, no, I'm not doing that, but like I'll make sure she doesn't speak and stuff. But this sets off a chain of events where they kind of form like an unexpected bond whenever she pops back up in his life a little bit later at a police lineup where she does not identify anyone, but they still view her as a loose end. So this gang wants her dead. They kind of start falling for one another. And so it's kind of like this romantic stuff going on over here with like this like gangland warfare here. So there's like also some other elements with the gang of like people jockeying for power, like with some of different entities and stuff. So like gangland, power grab mixed with romance. And I think it does a really nice job overall. And I really like the dynamic between the two main characters. I do not know the actors' names, but the main actress, I found her to be very charming in her role. And while I do feel some of the romantic relationship was maybe a little bit rushed to be believable, I think overall they have enough chemistry that you can kind of understand where there's a little bit of kinship between them that could blossom into something. I think this develops really nicely, has some really, really well done action sequences, which I really appreciated. And overall, it's like a tight 90 minutes, so it doesn't really like keep you drawing out stuff unnecessarily. It just kind of keeps like the necessary bits and keeps on going. Really well done movie. The release comes with this booklet, which I wasn't able to show off earlier here. So those are our two main characters, which you get a essays and artwork reproductions and all that stuff. You can always count on booklets in the first pressing. So they've been re-releasing some of their earlier titles with second pressings that don't have the booklet. So might as well make the investment early on because you don't really get much of a sale for these. So if you're going to find these cheaper, you're maybe going to be like $5 cheaper, but you might as well just get it now and get the booklet if you're going to get it, because this is a really nice release. It comes from a 4K restoration of the original camera negative, which looks real nice. It's really good. The audio is great, sounds nice. I didn't hear a lot of age-related anomalies. This comes with a commentary track, a 21-minute interview with, I believe, maybe one of the action directors, and then a 26-minute visual essay from a film historian, which is really cool. So A Moment of Romance, really cool, really highly recommended. If you like any kind of like Asian cinema, like action, martial arts, romance, any of that, recommended. So yeah, Moment of Romance hits the spot.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, Ratings Films, they always put out some really cool stuff. I'm glad that you're able to cover that. I'm always discovering some really cool stuff. And so my next title is my last Warner Archive title. Had a lot this week, but we love them. So this is Wichita, and here's the back. So this is about Wyatt Earp and becoming the famous lawman. It's not as bad as I thought. So I know
High praise.
that's not sounding great so far, but I will say, like, I've sort of been pushing myself to watch more Westerns, especially like old school Westerns. I tend to like stuff that's maybe like a little more cerebral. I know that sounds pretentious, but I like stuff that's maybe like a little more thought provoking. And I will say that like this is really entertaining, pretty engaging. It's kind of doesn't go like the sort of biopicky sort of route that I thought maybe it was going to, but it kind of just has a very specific time and place in Wyatt Earp's life, and there is some really cool like twists and turns. It's not really like that kind of movie, but there is sort of like a subplot where like they don't like how he's running things, so like the town is basically trying to have him killed, and then there's sort of like an interesting like way that's resolved. I won't spoil it, but yeah, it threw me for some loops, and I thought that was cool. I there's not much to say about it. It's very by the numbers. It's kind of how you think, except for maybe, like I said, if the one sort of like misdirection in the film, but it's fine. They kind of slap on a romantic subplot that I always just feel like most of the time they're kind of useless. Mira Miles is in this. She's good. She just doesn't have a lot to do. Well shot. Some of the jokes were pretty good. Some of them are a little saucy for the time. Some of them are like clearly they can't say they're sex workers, but like they are. But yeah, censorship, you couldn't say that. It's very breezy. It's 81 minutes. It goes by really quickly. Again, it's a fun watch. It's not like something that's very deep, but if you're just kind of in the mood for something like silly, not silly, but just something that's just not very, you don't have to really think. Sort of like Spinout, I guess. It's like it's just you put it on, you have a good time. This looks really great. This is in color, and like Spinout, they really utilize the I don't know if this was tech. Oh yeah, this is Technicolor because it's in CinemaScope. Woo, woo. Um, so yeah, they really utilize that nicely. Colors really pop. I mean, it's not a very visually sumptuous movie, but I mean, it really makes the most of like its color palette and production design. A lot of these old movies were shot extremely well. I mean, like your bigger like Warner Brothers movies definitely got nicer, directors of photography. So yeah, all that I really appreciate. It's a good time. It's not gonna redefine the genre, but that's okay. Sometimes it's just nice to have something that's very comforting, very not breaking any of the rules kind of, kind of movie. So.
Yeah. I've said this on the podcast recently, but I've been getting more into the Western genre in the past few years, and mostly because of physical media. So I can thank physical media for that. But I'm interested in checking that out. It doesn't sound like maybe an essential one, but maybe just like a good time. So I'm looking forward to it. My next film is from 88 Films, and it is the Category 3 thriller Taxi Hunter, which I did not know this was a Category 3 movie until you told me. And I had already watched it, and I was like, interesting. I did not feel that there was enough in here to warrant that, but ratings are weird, so who knows. So here, I believe there's double-sided artwork. Yes, so here's the artwork here. And as usual with 88 Films, you get a fold-out poster, which I will show off here just a second as I gingerly replace this this cover because I don't want it to rip. So the foldable poster, which with what wall space am I supposed to put this up? But still, I'm glad to have it. So here's the front here, and yes, there. And I don't think I ended up showing off the disc art, so I'll show that off here. So right there. So yeah, this is a pretty solid movie. I guess the easiest way to kind of categorize that is like more of a valiant or like a reasonable falling down, I guess. It's about a man who is kind of nebbish and kind of just like going through life, just trying to just be kind and everything. And like he has a pregnant wife. He's like at the beginning of the movie, he notices just like this movie portrays like taxi drivers as just a bunch of jerks who are constantly shaking down people who are like basically like bribing them in order to get them to like, if they want to get a ride somewhere, like you got to pay me $30 extra or something, like that type of stuff, and like being mean to old people, all this type of stuff. Until one night, I will not spoil stuff, but I would just say tragedy strikes, and this man feels like he has to get revenge upon taxi drivers for the role they play in like upending his life. So it is basically him going vigilante on taxi drivers. So he's becoming the taxi hunter, and he has a good friend who works for the police department, who's kind of like kind of ignorant to what's going on with his friend. He knows he's in a bad place in his life, but he doesn't know that he could get to a point where he's like killing people. So it's basically kind of it goes about pretty much how you would expect. It's like an hour and a half long, and it doesn't really upend things too much. It's pretty entertaining. There is a character within this that seemed like way over the top and absurd, and I was like, what is this character's deal? Like, what is this about? Like, at the beginning of the film, like you're like, okay, this character's undercover, and he's like, I'll be generous, late 30s, probably early 40s, maybe late 40s. I don't know. I'm bad with ages. But he's an older gentleman. That makes me feel old because I'm like, well, we're both in our 30s. So he is he's a detective who's been on the job for at least a few years, and he has like a oversized basketball jersey, like a hat that's like turned to like a baseball cap that's turned sideways and stuff. And I'm like, okay. And he's always kind of like way over the top and calling people bro and stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is funny. But he doesn't let up from that like pretty much the entire movie. He's like that all the time. And I was like, this character is so strange and over the top. And it didn't ruin the movie for me. I just felt like a weird tonal disconnect compared to like this like intense thriller you're getting for the remainder of the movie. Other than that, I think it's really well done. It just seemed to have a problem with tone in that regard. It seemed like it was like, we need some comedy in this. We need this like silly character. I'm like, I didn't really need that, but okay. Go with God. But overall, fun movie. I enjoyed it. This from 88 Films looks really nice. I did not get a clarification on the source of this, like a new 2K or 4K restoration or anything like that. But it does look pretty nice. There's some minor nicks here and there and some signs of wear, but overall, it's a very nice transfer. Not much in the way of black crush or compression artifacts, any of that. Maybe just like slight age to it, but nothing terrible. Sounds pretty nice in the original Cantonese 2.0 audio. Once again, maybe just the slightest bit of wear to it, but it maybe sounds like slightly hollow in a few exchanges, but not a huge lack of quality here. There is a commentary track from film historian Frank Jing, who does a lot of 88 Films commentaries. There's a 29-minute interview with the screenwriter, a 27-minute interview with the, I believe, the second unit director, and then there's another 18-minute interview with, I believe, the lead actor. And couple that with the special packaging and the presentation, overall, 88 Films did a nice job with Taxi Hunter. I will say, if you're like a Category 3 fiend who's like looking for like the most like screwed up, twisted tale, I didn't really feel that the violence was that over the top. There's like some gore and stuff, but nothing I would call insane. I've seen way more intense Category 3 movies, but if that's the only reason you're looking for this, I would say like temper your expectations. It's still a good movie, but you might not get the bloodlust that you're like looking for. So be aware of that when you're looking at Taxi Hunter.
Yeah, that one I was really excited. I know I got really excited when I saw it on the sheet, so I was like, that's really cool. Untold Story, or yeah, the Untold Story was maybe one of my favorite Category 3, and that particular release has a really good documentary about that, like the rating system, which is sort of like almost like a genre in and of itself now, but yeah, pretty interesting. I like that one. It's not my favorite, but like also Ebola Syndrome, if you were looking for like a really out there Category 3 film. But
yeah, I think that's this director. Yeah, Herman Yao. So that's cool.
yeah, and he also maybe did Untold Story.
It's not listed on the back, but you're probably right.
But either way, good release. It sounds like. So my next title is a 4K release of a film that I'm not gonna like spend a lot of time because there's been whole swaths of videos and essays on why this movie is such shit show. But um, the 4K release of The Flash,
Mm.
and I like this packaging. We're gonna start off on some positives here. um, really nice presentation. So here is back, and nothing really spectacular on the inside. So there's a digital code. It's not in there now, but if you order it, you will have. So where do I begin? Um, I feel like I'm a DC apologist now. It's really hard to be a DC fan lately. Hopefully we're gonna start getting some really good titles. But yeah, I can understand why people didn't really like The Flash. Like it is just a huge mess. And it's like where do I even begin? Tonally, it's weird. There's like big chunks of like continuity, their own continuity that they just ignore, like whole cloth. The CGI is really bad, and then it was weird that the director sort of doubled down on the bad CGI. There's like at the beginning, there's like a pretty infamous like barrage of falling babies that are like CGI, and of course you're not gonna. I mean, obviously you're not gonna like do that with real babies, but like the CGI was just so bad. And it's just, I feel like it's symptomatic of just how messy this film was. It went through so many different directors and writers. Um, the cameos at the end, I won't spoil it for anybody, but they're very ghoulish if you stop to really think about those implications. Um, it has some moments where it has some real heart, but it just gets buried in this like it's fan service done horribly wrong. I talk about Futurama, the new season, having really amazing fan service where it feels natural and organic to the story, where this is just like, hey, Batman said that line that you all know. Remember that? Like, it was funny. I was watching this with my husband, and he's not like, he likes this kind of stuff, but he's not like the biggest fan. Like the original like Tim Burton's Batman, like got me into all of this stuff. So when he was just like, "You want to get nuts? We'll get nuts," and he like turns to me, and he's like, "What is he talking about?" I'm like, "Oh, well, that's a line from the first film, but it doesn't really work here, but it's here anyways," and that's just sort of emblematic of this entire movie. It sort of is weird how it justifies its own existence. Um, Michael Shannon is very wasted in this. Absolute legend. He just sort of like did the movie, probably got a big fat paycheck. Good for him. It sucks though because it's probably the last time we'll ever see a lot of these characters since this is getting like everything's just sort of getting restarted. And it's such a horrible farewell to a lot of these iterations of these characters. Supergirl is great. She's the far and away the best thing about this movie. She is also very much wasted in this. I wish I could say good things about it, but it's a good release. It looks great. I mean, this being like a newer 4K release, this was shot in digital, so it looks the upconvert to 4K looks flawless. I mean, there's a lot of detail. I mean, especially some like the darker lit scenes, especially stuff when they start going to when they get to like Siberia. That's a whole thing. You can tell that it's kind of good to have this more like polished sort of detail and clarity in some of these like darker lit scenes and some of the more moodier stuff with Batman. They kind of don't really do anything with Batman that much. I hate it so much. I hate it because I wish it was better, and it makes me weary that like James Gunn went to bat for this and was like, "This is really fantastic." It's not. But anyways, it's a good release though. It looks great, sounds great. I know that some people do like this movie. That's great. Yeah, I hate it.
I mean, let's just hope that James was just being like a team player with his new employer and not trying to cut down everyone before they could. Yeah, yeah. We'll see. I don't know. I'm probably watching that one this weekend, and I'll have to see how I feel about it. But it makes me sad because I love the Flash so much as a character. He's always been one of my favorites. But we'll see. We'll see. Probably not going to be great. But my next title is pretty great. I enjoyed it at least. It's my next multi-title release. This is from Fun City Editions, and this is Primetime Panic 2, which the first Primetime Panic was released, I think, a couple years ago through Fun City Editions' relationship with Vinegar Syndrome. And I actually picked that one up when it was on sale, I believe earlier this year or late last year. But I haven't got to check out that one yet. So I kind of jumped into the second one, just kind of not sure what kind of to expect thematically, but now I'm really excited to check out the first edition. So this has a booklet here. And this is basically just a collection of 3 TV movies that kind of I believe it's the same producer, and it's just kind of like tackling kind of like big hot button themes at the time. So here's the underlying art beneath the disc here. So it's interesting kind of like how this is curated. I think all these movies are entertaining in their own ways. The first one is probably the most traditionally like parents be afraid, like that type of stuff, because it's the first one is the death of Richie, which spoiler alert title. But it's about a young kid who's like he's like kind of starts getting into, it's like the typical tale, starts getting into drugs, and the parents are trying to save him, and just like he keeps trying to like turn his life around, but then he'll kind of get like sucked back into his old crowd and all that stuff. So it's just kind of like your kind of after school special type of situation. This one has Eileen Brennan. I was trying to name Robbie Benson, Ben Gazzara, a bunch of Charles Fleischer, Clint Howard. So yeah, there's a lot of good names in this, but it's probably my least favorite of the 3, just because it's like something you kind of expect of just like there's a lot of angst with like this teenager like on drugs and everything. It's entertaining, but like of the 3, it's probably my least favorite. The next film, which is Incident at Crest Ridge. This one is actually my favorite. I enjoyed this one quite a bit. And this one actually, I was excited to see Eileen Brennan return. And this time she has a much bigger role. She played the mother in the previous one, but she's the lead role of, it's like her and her husband, who's a doctor, are like new to town. And whenever they arrive to town, they kind of pretty much immediately get caught up in this like web of corruption where like the mayor's on the take, the sheriff is incompetent and he's like on the mayor's payroll, and it doesn't like convict anyone who's actually doing wrong because he's been paid off and everything, until this woman comes to town, like I said, played by Eileen Brennan, who thinks it's ridiculous that nothing's being done. And whenever she decides to run for sheriff, and she wins. So it's kind of like the concept of this is like, there's a woman sheriff? What are we gonna do? But she is portrayed to be a badass. It's mostly just the people who are on the wrong side of the law who are just like, what is this woman gonna do to us? And it's like, she's gonna clean up the town. So it's like kind of like it's the one I can most see like as like a traditional feature film rather than just like a made-for-TV feature film. It's very entertaining in that way that kind of like the 70s films were, where it's like an outlaw town and you have to like clean it up and everything. It's a lot of fun. There's like a lot of intimidation of the new sheriff, but like also her getting the begrudging respect of her police force and all that stuff. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this one quite a bit. And the final film goes back more into like, oh yeah, this is kind of made for TV, but it's still fun. And that is The Seduction of Gina. And this is, it sounds tawdry, but it's not really. It's Valerie Bertinelli plays a newlywed who gets sucked into the world of gambling. So she starts, her husband's like working long hours. I believe he's in medicine or something. But she starts like spending her nights like she's like taken at first by a friend to like a casino because she doesn't want to be home alone, and she kind of like weasels her way into like this thing, and then she kind of finds that she loves it there, and she kind of gets addicted, and she starts to have like an affair with like a guy at the casino who's like works there, and she just gets way in over her head, and she's just like, what is she gonna do? She's like destroying her life through gambling. And yes, it's like kind of a trite premise, and not like super, like it's not super original, but it's executed well in that way that you want made for TV movies to be executed. They're not great, but they're entertaining, and just kind of like the moral panic issues. It's pretty fun. I think the actors do a good job. So overall, these three movies are entertaining. If you love made for TV movies, this is like a pretty good like range of like the, like I said, Primetime Panic. And overall, these look really nice. I will say before the death of Richie, there's a title card that talks about how they're like all the original elements are pretty much like in horrible condition or just like lost. So there it says like this is not going to be in great condition. It's going to look pretty rough, but this is the best we can do unless you just never want to see it again. And it does look pretty rough, I will admit. It's a lot of wear and tear. It's not unwatchable by any means, but it's just like you need to know, and they give you warning that this isn't going to be like a pristine viewing experience. The other two films are a lot better. They've also been restored. They look really nice. Very little in the way of wear and tear or scratches or anything like that. They look really nice. So the Death of Richie, not the best looking. The other two, really great looking overall. All sound good within their kind of like limited mono situations. Not too much in the way of wear and tear. Each film gets an audio commentary track. I believe there are no other special features. There's just the new restorations, 3 commentary tracks, 3 movies. This isn't like terribly expensive, and I think now that they're away from the Vinegar Syndrome OCN distribution partnership, you can get this slipcover here without the extra charge. I know I bought the first one on sale without the slipcover because the place I was buying it from didn't have it. So now I have one with slipcover, one not. So I have to like tamp down my OCD on that. But if you order now, you can just like get the slipcover without extra charge, so which is pretty cool. So I mean, I love Vinegar Syndrome and stuff. I'm just glad that they're kind of moving away a little bit more from the Vinegar Syndrome situation, which now that I'm thinking about it, I think I did say that this was a Vinegar Syndrome release, or either that I'm just thinking of the Monument Tower Brightwood. But this is just Fun City Editions in collaboration with MVD Entertainment. So
Nice.
Check it out if you're a fan of made-for-TV movies.
Well, you know that I am a slut for made-for-TV movies, so bring it on. I particularly love like horror made-for-TV movies, but I like that angsty, very retro-y, like dated kind of. Yeah, give it to me.
Yeah.
So my final title is like I ended on a little bit of, or I started on a little bit of a sour note, so I want to end on a really positive note. And I just got this in today. I'm actually excited to maybe like rewatch it. This does have a commentary track, which I love. So it is the Blackening, and then this is the 4K version from Lionsgate. So here's the back. And there's the inside. This does have a digital code that's not in there now, but if you order yours, it will be there. This is really interesting. This is one that I've kind of wanted to see ever since I saw the trailer. It looked really interesting in a sort of post Jordan Peele sort of like horror landscape. And yeah, this movie really does, I think, tackle all this, like the racism and the inherently sort of how slasher films were sort of um racist in a way sometimes, as far as like the whole the black person dies first kind of trope. And this plays with that in a really interesting way. And it also has a really interesting like 80s slasher trope at the end where which was like really cool because it's like a trope, and I can't mention it because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's one of those that like it's so prevalent in a lot of 80s films that it's kind of surprising that they haven't really sort of used that more in like sort of these like homages and these sort of like movies that are kind of replicating that particular decade. So have you seen this? You've seen this, right? Okay. So when you see it, you'll know what I mean. Like you covered The Burning, and there's it has some interesting parallels with that. I'll just say.
Nice.
Yeah. So I thought it was really clever. I did only so I will say that I've had time to only watch this once. I want to watch it again. Um, I will say I don't know how well the twist is set up. Like, I don't think it was horribly done. It's just seemed like a little more build up to that. But that wasn't. And again, I feel like this is something with like repeated viewings. I'll be a little bit more confident in that opinion. But yeah, I thought otherwise it's not so bad that it didn't like affect my enjoying it. The humor is really well done. The acting is great. I feel like everybody has a lot of really great chemistry. So yeah, I think it's awesome. Again, it does have some featurettes. It does have a commentary track. There's plenty of features. I love that. I love when a movie's not just dumped out, that it has a lot of really nice stuff. Looks great, sounds great. We get a Dolby Atmos track, which was a nice surprise. And yeah, this movie gets really action packed, especially towards the end. So, you kind of do want like a little bit of a more oomph on your soundtrack. So great movie. I'm excited to hear what you think when you see it. Maybe when we do like a Halloween episode, we can like revisit some of these as well. But yeah, loved it. I think it's a must watch. So check it out.
Yeah, that seems a good one to go ahead and add to your collection if you want to get ready for your Halloween viewing later. You'll just have that just to throw into the mix. My final title, this is from Universal, and this was a show that I watched whenever it first aired, but I never made it past the first season, so I was kind of glad to get back into the show and kind of finally round it out. This is, like I said, from Universal, and this is Good Girls, the complete series, which was 4 seasons, and they're not terribly long seasons. That's like overall 50 episodes altogether throughout these 4 seasons. I will show you kind of the individual artwork here. So season 1 is, I believe, 10 episodes and 2 discs. So both disc here, and then underneath you can kind of see the episode descriptions and all that, so if you want to check those out. And season 2 we have here. So this is a series starring Retta, Mae Whitman, and I was hoping it would come to me as I was speaking their names into existence. Christina Hendricks. I was like, I know her. So here's the 3rd season. So basically what this one is kind of the elevator pitch is like Breaking Bad, but for suburban moms, which is kind of simplistic, but it's like kind of easy to get someone like interested in that. So this starts out, it's like these three moms who are kind of in different situations. Some are married, some are like divorced, or but they're all friends, and they're all kind of struggling in an economic sense, and they're kind of put into a position where they like really need money, and they decide to rob one of the stores, like a grocery store that one of them works at. But they pull it off, but it doesn't go off without a hitch, and it kind of sets off this chain of events where a gang that was kind of like running money through that store, so they kind of like took this gang's money and kind of get tied up in that gang world and all this stuff. So it's just them throughout the seasons, like getting more and more like into this moral gray area where they were like stealing to help out their situations in their lives and like get money for very important things, but then they also kind of get caught up in this lifestyle, and like it's kind of a complex issue. But then there's also each of them kind of have their own issues, like on the domestic front, where like some of them have like cheating husbands or like a sick child or all kinds of stuff. There's also, it has a pretty good ensemble cast, including Matthew Lillard. So it was good to see him. I always like him. But what I really like about this is like it's a lot about how the toxicity of men kind of force like these women into situations that are not ideal, and how they kind of get themselves out of it and kind of take power back for themselves, and how they kind of use their like assets that maybe men undermine to their advantage. Like, oh, they don't believe that we are capable of doing this, so we can get away with it more easily because people like men don't believe we can pull this off. So it's like, even if there's like some suspicion on them, like, oh, maybe it's like their husbands that are doing it or something. It's like kind of like that kind of bullshit. Like they're being underestimated at every turn, which is, I like how they kind of use that and like take back their own power through this kind of like misconceptions and like false beliefs. But overall, it's a pretty fun series. Like it's hard to say that it's as good or well written as Breaking Bad, but it's a lot of fun, and it's like good in its own way that like primetime television can be really fun and inviting and engaging. The only thing I will admit, this ends on like an unfortunate cliffhanger, and this was canceled, so you may have like a little bit of like, oh, that's it. Oh, damn. So like just know that it does end on a cliffhanger, but like the journey's so good throughout, it's still worth it to me, and I'm glad that I did get to take it. Just know that if you are someone who's super frustrated by unfinished journeys, that's the nature of being canceled. So Good Girls, I'm glad it got a Blu-ray release. It's a lot of fun. There's no special features, but it looks really nice in HD. Sounds great with 5.1 audio. 50 episodes, no compression artifacts on these discs. They're spread out well. Good release.
Nice. Yes, that is a series that it's funny, kind of like you. I started, and it wasn't that it was necessarily bad, but I just sort of like moved on. But yeah, that is a good excuse to get back into that. It's actually good to know about the cliffhanger situation, but with stuff being revived, or maybe even like a movie or something to sort of finish that, you never know. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So that is our episode. As always, thank you for checking this out. And we do this daily, every week, so you will want to subscribe. It's really cool seeing a lot of you coming back to these videos. The obligatory like, subscribe, all that really great stuff. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, thank you for hanging out with us.